I know some of you are probably thinking, man, what a title. We're killing our evangelists. That's a crazy kind of title, ain't it? I realize that it is. But it's definitely something that, man, we need to talk about. If there's ever been a time before that I feel like we need to do a little video, have a little bit of conversation about this and address this issue, because it rarely gets talked about, and that is to the detriment of the church as a whole. And if you're not saved, and maybe you just recently got saved, this may not be the video for you, and some of it may not even make as much sense. So, to be honest with you, this is probably something that I would say deals more so with the ministry of evangelists, or what we have sometimes called revivalists, and it's probably much better addressed to the pastors and leaders of small, medium, and maybe some large churches. And it's something that's needed to be said for a really long time, but very few people really want to tackle it, because some people are afraid, man, people are going to get the wrong impression. They're going to start thinking that you're advocating some sort of self-promoting, some sort of money-hungry, high-life ministry endeavor. And most of the pastors, most of the evangelists and ministers that I know, they're not about that life. That's not what they're after. They're in it for the souls, and they're good men and women of God. But that mentality doesn't really surprise me, that people would think or feel that on the surface when anything is mentioned about some of the things I'm going to talk about, because the average person associates all churches, they paint the whole entire church with a broad brush, whether it's big, small, whatever. They associate it with what they've seen on television, with the big mega churches and some of the pastors who they see every time they turn to the channel. It's sow a seed and beg for money, and what happens is it creates a bitter taste in people's mouth, because to be honest with you, a lot of that has been purely filthy lucre, greed, and just ridiculous, outright ridiculous. But with all that said, aside from that, I'm hoping that I can share something that will make sense for some people, because I can assure you, for the average small to medium and even some large ministries, we do good to just keep the church bills paid and keep our families fed. I mean, it's terrible to say, and most people are not going to come out and say that, but a lot of times that's the way that it is. And it's not that ministries or ministers are looking to live the high life, but many ministers, like myself, they've had to put their own money into the ministry numerous times through the years, just to keep the bills paid, the lights on, the mortgage paid, just to make sure that ministry kept going forward. And so it's not about money, and it's not about the financial gain that people can get. It's really about souls. But I want you to remember something. I mean, in the meanwhile, while you're working in the kingdom of God, the man of God, the woman of God, the people of God, man, they got to survive. And we as the church, I think we can do a lot better, and we should do better, because at day's end, we're talking about the men and women of God, God's elect, God's called. And we should do everything we can to ensure that these people are not broke paupers, but these are people who have been adequately taken care of, shown love, appreciation, and respect, and especially the ones with family, like kids that are involved. I wouldn't want somebody's kids in ministry to grow up with the impression that the church is nothing more than what it should have been, as we look at the book of Acts and we see how that they worked and had all things together common, and they had respect, many of them, for one another. But so I want you to see, as I kind of jump into this is something that I put a little bit of thought into, but I didn't have as much time to put it together. I got tired of sitting around thinking about it. I'm just going to go ahead and say some things that I felt impressed in my spirit. But there's probably going to be some people that end up scrutinizing what I say, and they start thinking things like, I wonder what gives you the right to address these issues, or the right to say that. Well, for one, I've been in ministry myself for now over 25 years. And as I once was an evangelist myself, and anytime I wasn't pastoring, most all of that I was evangelizing. So, and I've always said that the best host pastors who host a revival and have an evangelist come and preach for them and ministries are the ones who are evangelists themselves, because they know what it feels like to be in those shoes. I even said this in the past many times, but you take organizations like I'm a part of in the Church of God. I've always thought it wouldn't be a bad idea that when they take some of these ministers through a program, before they put them in as pastors, to expect them to at least hold a 2-week revival, a week here or a week there, I just feel like it would really give them an edge on having revival, hosting revival, and what it's like to be on the other side of that. I just feel like that would be a respectful thing that would benefit the church as a whole. So in the time that I have been a minister myself, I've had the opportunity to see the good, the bad, and the unfortunate. And unfortunately, I hate to tell you this right now, but a lot of our churches are killing our evangelists. And that's sad, because the evangelism ministry, the revivalist ministry, is a vital part of keeping fresh fire and bringing life back into a dying church. And we're going to continue to see more and more evangelists that are coming off the road, becoming stationary, sitting in a church somewhere on a pew. Some of them are going to turn to pastoring. Some of them may not even be in a calling in doing so that they really are not fit for. And if we don't change the current trajectory that we're on and start really valuing these men and women of God and their families, the church is going to be in bad shape. We really need the ministry of revivalism and evangelism. We really, really need that in the church. It's a vital, valuable part to breathing life back into the valley of dry bones. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about, because at the heart of all of this, kind of what got some of this stirred up in my heart, it's something I've been thinking about for a long, long time, but it frustrates me to know that there are churches that schedule a revival with an evangelist or with a ministry to come and minister to them, and when the evangelist leaves the church after the revival or meeting is over with, they're financially upside down. They can't afford to get to the next revival, or they're having to rub nickels together to buy a quarter pounder and split it up 4 ways amongst the family because the church failed to take care of the people. And I know how some people think, and they say things like, well, we're supposed to live by faith, and it's hard on everybody. Man, don't you know it is? But that is no excuse. That is disgusting not to take care of the man and the woman of God. I mean, for crying out loud, we got people that tell us the weather forecasters make $150,000, $200,000 a year, and a lot of time they don't even get the weather right. And yet we've got the man of God telling us about our souls and how to live and abide in Christ. And yet he's supposed to live off chicken nuggets and fish sticks and barely able to pay his bills and live off the government and food stamps. That is not the way that it should be. I know personally evangelists who struggle to make their car payments, the same car that they're racking up literally thousands of miles on to get from one revival to the next revival to the next revival. That's not taking into consideration oil changes that they typically cannot do themselves because they don't have a garage, they don't have a home to do it in. And so when they pay for a oil change, and some of these larger vehicles they have to travel in, many times they're paying full price, sometimes $70 to $100+ just for an oil change. And at every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, depending on how long they go in between, that adds up pretty quick whenever you start putting that all the time. So, they're putting a lot of miles on their vehicles, and they're doing this with vehicles that many times they have financed. They can't hardly pay for the laundromats where they got to go to wash their clothes, let alone feed their families. You'd be surprised how many traveling evangelists who are on the road that when they get where they're going, they got to try to figure out, okay, where's the nearest laundromat? And they're pumping quarters into machines sometimes that it don't work right. Their clothes don't get washed or dried right. While yet people like myself, we've got washers, we've got dryers, and for the most part, we don't really have that issue. So I realize this is something that they stepped out by faith to do. But I think that we could have a little bit more respect for the sacrifices that many of them are making. I mean, if you stop and think about it, a lot of these evangelists that I've talked to, many of the ones that I've known, have really struggled to even pay for food, gas, to get back and forth between these revivals. And don't forget, I mean, when you stop and think about it, most all of them don't have the ability to go out and buy groceries from Aldi or Walmart or somewhere and come back and put them in the refrigerator and make meals during the week. So they can't just prepare meals like you and I can. So whenever they eat, 90% of the time when it's not the church hosting and helping or whatever, they are having to pay full price at fast food restaurants and various other restaurants at the full price. And you folks that go out to eat, you know exactly how expensive that is. It's ridiculous. You take out 3-4 people in a family, and you're looking at anywhere between $50 to $100 at a lot of these places. And you walk away, and it was just enough food for one meal. So that's a lot to take into consideration. And some folks I know have told me before, because they don't really understand it, they say, well, the church takes care of the meals. But I want you to understand something. That's not always the case. I cannot tell you how many times I've had an evangelist tell me they were scheduled to go to a church to preach revival, and then they get there and nobody has said anything about when we're going to eat, what we're going to eat, if we're going to eat. And imagine being a mom and a dad, and you got kids, and you show up for a revival and nobody's saying anything, and so, okay, well, we're in a strange place. Where's the local Subway? Where's the local Burger King or Wendy's? Or, we need to feed our kids. And so they end up going out and they end up spending money. A lot of times money that they really need to go towards other things. And, that brings me to probably a pretty critical point, and it really, really irritates me. I mean, for crying out loud, pastors, leaders, if you're going to schedule a revival and you're going to have somebody come, make preparations. Don't wait till the very last minute. Especially a lot of these preachers, and especially if they got kids, after revival's over, don't wait till 10 o'clock at night. I don't know what we're going to eat. I have no idea. And by that time, a lot of places are closed. And so you end up eating garbage food, right before everybody's going to go to bed. It's really not practical. It's not fair. And I know that some of this may seem petty to some people, but I think as a church, I've said this, I think we can do a whole lot better. And I think we can have a whole lot more respect for the man and the woman of God. Most all of the evangelists that I know, they're not expecting caviar on fine china. They just want to feel like that they're not a burden to accommodate the most basic human needs. I have personally been in this position where that you go preach for somebody and you are afraid to even ask, can I get something out of the refrigerator? I've even had people insinuate that was not appropriate, and so I don't know what I'm supposed to do, what I'm not supposed to do. I've spent entire revivals when I was evangelizing, basically in a room with all of my family, scared to death that the kids were going to be too loud, they're going to make too much noise. Man, if you've never evangelized, you have no clue just how difficult that can be. And so these are all things I think that we can do a little bit better. But I'm just going to step out on a limb, and I'm going to say some things that need to be said. And I'm probably gaining all kinds of friends in the process of this. And I may be misunderstood by some people. But with that in mind, if you are a church and you're a pastor or a leadership or you're a church clerk, if your church cannot afford to compensate a seasoned evangelist, especially a family, at least $200 per day for their time to be there in the ministry, then by all means, don't schedule revival yet. Do some fundraisers. do some bake sales, some barbecue dinners, or something, and save up the money before you schedule revival. And let me break down the reason why that I'm telling you that. Think about this. If you paid a skilled professional $25 an hour, that would be $200 per day. Well, guess what? If you were to do that for an evangelist, that does not include travel expense, the hotels that some churches expect the evangelist to book for themselves, or the fact that nowadays that we don't have as many week-long revivals, so it's a 3-day revival. So when they left the last revival, they had to get a hotel halfway or down the street at their own expense for the last 4 days while they wait on your meeting to come up. And so they've been camped out for days waiting to come to your church to minister. So when you take that in perspective, think about the expense of travel. I'll use one meeting that we went to just for sake of example. I live in Florida, and we traveled. I don't want to say a particular place because I don't want anybody to get their feelings hurt or anything, but we traveled mid United States from Florida. You're talking like at least 8.5, 10-hour trip to go preach a revival. And the revival expenses to go up and back, my gas and all that sort of stuff, was over $450 in travel expense. Before I leave, I ended up changing the oil in my car. I got my clothes, that certain suits and stuff, got them dry clean. You know, you can't even really include a lot of that stuff. That's normal everyday stuff. By the time I get up there, and then when the meeting is over with and you come home and you can't even cover your travel expenses, there is something wrong with that. And churches need to do a better job at taking care of these evangelists. We're killing our evangelists, and you're going to put a lot of them off the field. Many of them have already had to make the decision that they cannot do that. You know, take this for example. Well, I'm already at it, so I put things in perspective. Some people are like, oh my goodness, you know, $200 a day. Well, some of you skilled people that are skilled in a craft or a trade, how much money do you make a day? How much money do, you know, people that you know that are in a professional industry, what do they make per day when they work? Well, here's another catch to this. Many of these pastors or these evangelists that are driving all over, up and down the roads from state to state, many of them, they also have wives who are multi-talented, kids who are talented. And if you really took the whole thing in perspective, you're not just getting a seasoned preacher, you're getting a seasoned preacher's wife, you're getting their kids, you're getting the whole entire ministry. Why are we trying to get, you know, this great revival with a Cracker Jack box contribution to take care of God's people? It is a crying shame. I know that everybody won't understand that, but I've evangelized, and I understand it, and I get it, and it's ridiculous. Years ago, there used to be, like, I'll call it an unwritten rule that was upheld by a lot of pastors, that if an evangelist came, that they never received less offering for the week than the pastor's salary was. So what that equates to, like, let's say, for example, your pastor got $850 a week. If the evangelist came and he was there that week for revival, he didn't get anything less than what the pastor got himself. So as a pastor, you might wonder, well, do you live up to, you know, what you do? You can ask some of my closest friends. I have scheduled people that I dearly love for revival, and I had to cancel revival. I told them, I said, we're just not in a financial position right now. We need some more money to save. We need time to save some more money. And, you know, we're going to have to cancel it for right now. And I've had some people that I know say, well, Pastor Myers, you know, we're not coming for the money. You know, we'll come. And I say, no, because that is not how God's kingdom should work. I realize that you're willing to take that burden on yourself, but that's not fair to you to put that burden on your shoulders when legitimately many times it's just the fact that the local church has not done its due diligence so that they could take care of the man of God. It's not your responsibility to make it up on the back end and make your family sacrifice because the church was being lazy and not being prudent at what they were doing. Now, I know that may not sit well with a lot of people, but I've been known before not to shy away from things that were controversial. And let me share one more thing while I'm already at it, making all these great friends. If you tell your church every night, if you're a pastor, you're a clerk or a leader, and you get up and you tell your church every night of a revival or a meeting, we're taking up an offering for brother and sister so-and-so. Well, when that meeting is over with, you give them every single penny that came in that offering. If you don't, you're misleading every single person that gave in that offering, and that's not right. I can say this because I have literally known of pastors who have told their congregations this every time the offering was taken up. We're receiving an offering for brother and sister so-and-so, and so people gave. And at the end of the revival, when the pastor sat down and counted all the money, he didn't expect it to be that much money, and he was blown away. And he realized all of a sudden, wow, there's a significant amount of money that came in for this. And so the pastor took it on himself to say, well, they don't really deserve that much money. So they held several $100s out of that offering. You just lied to your church by doing that. And that's not fair. It's not fair to the people who gave, and it's not fair to the evangelists who came to preach for you. And let me explain to you why. Because your church may be the one church who made up the difference for the last 3 churches where they were upside down. And yes, that does happen. I understand that. I'm not trying to put a burden on little churches. I consider myself to be a small to medium-sized church myself. I know how it is. Things have been financially tight for all of us. But you can't keep giving evangelists the same offering, the same $50 offering to come and preach for you that we were given back in 1975. If you haven't noticed, the cost of rent, wages, everything is different, but the wages are nowhere near what the cost of living is now. So it's not fair for us to take care of ministers like they're the dishwasher or the busboy down at our favorite buffet. That's not right. We're killing these evangelists. We're starving them out, and I believe it's time that we do a better job. I know some personally right now who have had to come off the road because they couldn't afford to do it anymore. Many that when they came off the road with huge debt. And to me, that is really, really sad. And here's something to think about. Some of these ministers, they gave up really good careers. Some of these ministers have degrees that, if truth be told, they could be living in really nice homes that they are buying with stability. That is a huge word because there's very little stability in road evangelism. I'm talking about the kind of stability where moms know their kids are going to bed at a certain time of night, they're going to eat a certain thing, and if their kids have allergies, that they can navigate that easier. When they go to the grocery store, they can prepare their meals. They have stability in all of those things. They know where they're going to be sleeping at. And so when they could have that, but they have made sacrifice to minister to you and your congregation, I want you to know something. Most all of these people I'm talking about, they're not looking for sympathy because they chose to step out. But for crying out loud, let us have a little bit more compassion and consideration to their needs. I will never understand why that some people think that it's okay to treat a man and woman of God like they deserve to be poor and broke. I'll never understand that. And I can say that with all due respect because I don't consider myself wealthy. And as I mentioned before, I've pastored almost 16 years, and about 99% of that church, 16 years of pastoring, I have not received a salary weekly. We get a housing allowance because there is no parsonage at the church, but there were a lot of times we didn't get that either. And the only reason we get the housing allowance is because I brought on a church that rents from our church. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't get that either. So I'm not telling you something that I don't live by. I'm not sharing a creed that I don't live by. I'm brokenhearted for our evangelists. I'm brokenhearted for God's church, because I spoke to someone not too long ago who used to evangelize many years ago, and this is what they told me. I don't know what's changed. I know that a lot of people are struggling financially, but people just do not give like they used to, and they don't take care of these evangelists. So I'm going to try and close out with this thought, and it's something I want you to think about. If you're one of those people who've benefited and you've really enjoyed the revival ministry of an evangelist, somebody who's had an impact on your life, take consideration to let them know you appreciate them, first of all. And second of all, let them know you appreciate them by financially be supportive and prayerful support of them. And I realize churches like myself, I wish we could have a lot more revivals, but financially we can't have as many as we used to. We've gone from evangelists who used to pull travel trailers up and down the road, and revivals that went 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, back-to-back revivals. Sometimes churches have a revival, and a month later have another week revival. We've gone from that down to, Sunday revivals, 3-day revivals, and some of that is very difficult and almost unavoidable. But a lot of it has to do with exactly what I'm telling you, because a lot of pastors know that it is not fair to bring in an evangelist that can't afford the hotel, the cost of the food, and everything else, and then send the guy down the road with $150 with him and his wife and kids, knowing that ain't barely going to pay for his gas to get to the next meeting. So hopefully that will shed some light on a few things, and hopefully I've said everything I've said in the very best of spirits, because it is a controversial subject, and I know that people that love to hate on the church are going to nitpick it to death. But for the other folks who that this can have an impact on, I sure hope that it will. Let's take care of our evangelists. Let's be good to them. When they come and they preach for you, treat them like they deserve to be treated. God bless you.